Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is the founder of Fractal IEPM Equal Range. He is a freelance developer coach. His name is Jay Grieves. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Howdy. Happy to be here. And man, I have been looking forward to talking to you. So let me start with my spelunking down the Christian Reeve rabbit hole, in particular your music. So listen to a bunch of your songs, and you are a very skilled musician. So I
Thank
like your
you.
music. But it reminded me of one of my favorite harmless conspiracy theories that I'm trying to spread throughout the world, which is all accents are fake. And once you start singing, you can't keep up the ruse. Because let me tell you, I take any of your songs, play them for somebody, and ask them, hey, is this guy from LA, Dublin, Toronto, Nashville, or Manchester? I mean, no one's going to choose Manchester. You do not sing Manchester. Nobody does, right? Like, you listen to the Beatles, you hear the interview. You listen to Of Monsters and Men. I mean, heck, you listen to the Proclaimers, right? And I can't understand a single word they say in an interview. And yet I know that they will walk 500 miles. So I am psyched to talk to you and find out, is the accent real or is it all just a ruse to make you more interesting?
No, I've just been making it up all these years.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
It's a character that I made. No, it's interesting you say that because I do voice acting as well. Acting, I've learned languages over the years. There is a conscious level as far as like when you're learning another language. I think to mimic the accent and the sound and everything. And some people choose not to. Some people choose to. Fun fact: I'm not actually from Manchester. I'm from London. Been here 5 years, and I've not picked up the accent at all, which is interesting.
I mean, I'm American. I can't tell the difference between the two. So your secret's safe with me.
It's more like manner. Man, I was gonna say mannerisms. Certain slang words, certain ways that you would say things. The Mancunian accent at its strongest is quite a thick accent. But yeah, I just haven't really picked it up. He gave a couple of good examples there of Mice and Men, the Beatles from Liverpool. I think a lot of it comes down to obviously being a product of where you grow up. And if you're in a place enough, I think you subconsciously begin to pick up on things. I reckon it comes down to a fear of exclusion or standing out too much, unless you consciously want to stand out. So, like, if I moved to the States tomorrow and I was one of those dickheads who's like, oh, I want to be the only Englishman in the village kind of thing.
Oh man, you would clean up. You should come here.
Do you know, you say that, but I remember going to California years ago and I was in like a Hooters or something. I was waiting for my friend and I was at the bar and so like obviously every woman that works there is like beautiful and like everyone's a model or an actor or whatever, right? So I just turned to her and all right, I'm 21. I don't have Riz, as the kid said. I was just like, I was just there, whatever. And I'd been told like time and time again, like, oh, if you're British, people love that. Like they're all over it, right? I just turned to her and I was like, oh, so you a model? Like, and she just went like, yeah, stared at me, just point blank, dead eyes. And then I was like, cool. Because that's the end of that fucking conversation. Like,
Yeah, well, your problem is twofold. One, you went to California, and that's not America. Number two, you went to Hooters, and like all that travel to go to Hooters. Come on now.
whoa,
But
I didn't travel to the States to just fucking go to Hooters. All right, let's be clear.
okay, well, I'm glad you
I,
cleared that up because this was about to take a real wrong turn. But I'm telling you, man, you roll into Nashville,
oh,
and
hell yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I'm telling you, you like, I wouldn't see you for like 9 days.
Hope you're hearing that, Vic. When it happens, you won't see me for a while. That's the lady. That's the lady.
All right, so this leads me to my next question because again,
Okay,
going
so
through,
I'm being interviewed on my own show. This is interesting, but let's fucking go over there, man.
yeah, I'm hoping to do better than ChatGPT did because as much as I like that episode, like it kind of did you dirty in asking too much about the future when you're one day into a big transition. So, well, now that I've mentioned that, so how's the job going?
Which job?
So you got the full-time job. That's the video that I watched. I think you posted like a month ago.
Oh yeah, I quit that after
So,
2 weeks. It was toxic
oh, I can't wait to hear
hellhole.
about that. I can't wait to hear about that. But we got to put a pin in that. So my next question,
What's going on?
I mean, you
To be
invited me.
clear, I've got a full sheet of notes here
Oh my God, you even
to,
write
in,
with an accent.
what to interview Mr. Jay Grieves, and I'm being interviewed. I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, there's a strong argument that you're more interesting than I am. So
I
I'm here to
disagree, man.
uncover that. I mean, we'll get there. It's not a competition, right?
I do. I just feel like I'm doing you a disservice if we don't at least talk about you for some time.
Oh man, I'm here to have fun. I'm here to talk. I can't wait to find out. We'll get to me. Don't worry, we'll get to me.
All right,
My
right
next
on.
question, because I didn't have time to go through like all your back catalog. You've been doing this for like 6 years, right? You have
Yes.
300 episodes. That's a lot. That's I'll get there, but it'll take me a while. It seems like you mostly interview people kind of your age or younger. Is that right?
Uh, I would say that that tends to be who apply, because here's the thing, like I'm open to anyone. I don't care what age you
Oh,
are,
sure.
what
No, no.
background you
I'm
are.
not saying it's discriminatory. It's just the way
No,
that
no,
it's
no. I know,
like
I
plus or
know.
minus 5 years, right?
Yeah, like, I mean that's just kind of like the I would argue probably the average age of people that tend to podcast,
Yeah.
or be interested in doing a podcast. Like I don't consciously plan it. Like when I started, I would just reach out to people, post on like Reddit or stuff. I still do that occasionally. But when you've been doing it a while, people tend to approach you and be like, "Hey, I want to be on the show. Hey, we could do something." Or, there's people. Shout out to Latanya, who will reach out to you continuously because they know that you've done a good show for their clients previously. My show is. I treat it very seriously. Like I don't earn a penny from doing this, but I treat it like it's Larry King or something, like just really really
You
important. I take.
you haven't earned a penny yet, but you are. I can tell because you've gotten better, right? And you're putting in the
Oh,
rest.
thank you.
Just like music, I can tell you practice a bunch, right? I don't know if you're talented or not, but I can tell you're skilled, right? So I don't know how much you just had that, but I can imagine you taking kind of the Jerry Garcia approach where you just played and played and played until you were happy with what you could play, and then the joy of it kept driving you forward. But I listen to a lot of music, and I listen to a lot of bad music too. So I do feel fairly confident saying like you have like legit musical skill, and your podcasting skills have really grown. Like your interview questions are fantastic, which is one of the reasons why I was like so looking forward to just kind of, doing a little jujitsu here and turning that around and interviewing you. Again, we'll get to me, but I'm really looking forward to being like, oh yeah, that guy. Like when someone tells me like, hey man, you gotta listen to this podcast and it's you, like this will happen sometime in the next few years, I'm sure. I'll be like, dude, I was on that. Like if you go way back, you'll see this episode. It looks completely different because it was like way back when, before he'd really dialed it in. But it's still like, I mean, I got to talk to that guy before everybody knew his name. So looking forward to that day. You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it, man. I've listened to enough of you to know that you're not gonna give up. And that's really all it takes, that and time. Oh, and that's the other thing. So I got 2 decades on you. So let's set that right away. Like part of what I'm telling you is looking in the rearview mirror and like thinking back to like, hey, what was it like when I was 30? Oh yeah, it was actually kind of tough.
Wait, you're not in
And
your 50s, surely not?
oh, I'm like legit 50. I'll turn 51 this summer. So I got like 2 decades on you.
Oh, you look really fucking good for in your 50s, man. Jesus.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
I would put you
But
late 30s, early 40s.
oh,
Fucking
I love
hell.
that. And I've actually won many bar tabs, like having people guess my age. And hopefully I just kind of stay this way until like I just drop dead. But I still have that time and that experience. And let me tell you, it's not like my 30s were easier than, well, sorry. So my 30s were easier than yours. Let me throw that out there. And it's just a factor of the world having been different 20 years ago. It's growing up Gen X, right? Being
Hmm.
born in the mid 70s. Like I started listening to music, like really hearing it and being like, oh, I like that song. Kind of like 83, one of the best years of music ever. Like Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant was inescapable. And that is the summer, like Like I hear that song and I'm like, I'm a little kid. It's the summer and we're driving to the beach. I had the 90s, like, and all of it's like just tremendous chaotic glory. So grunge, shoegaze, electronic just coming in. Nobody knew what to call it. So like people slipping me tapes and like, hey, there's this thing called jungle. And I'm like, all right. I listen to it. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see why it's called that. And then eventually like all kind of morphs into electronic whatever. So back then, things were like legit easier. And so when I talk to people who are kind of earlier in their careers, I have to kind of grade on a curve because while there are some things that are like much, much, much easier, like you have the internet, like you probably don't remember not having the internet. You probably don't
Oh, I do.
remember. Oh, do you?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh, not having it or it not existing.
Not having it, but I remember. Okay, few things you
Yeah,
should
man.
know about me, right? So
Set the Wayback Machine.
I,
Let's
I
hear it.
I've always been like head in the past kind of person, very nostalgic. I love what has preceded, and that's been reflected in music, in my choice of activities, stuff like that. Like I'm online, I do everything online, but I'm not online all the time. Like my favorite thing to do is go out with my buddies, and like you won't even see me touch my phone. Like that to me is life. This is not life. This is a part of life, but
Sure.
people live, vicariously through the internet, vicariously through people, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I was a poor kid, so we didn't get internet until like I don't know, '06, something like that. But I remember the transition. Like I remember, I've got a weird memory. I can remember the '90s very well, even though I was born in 1993. I remembered like the look and feel of things,
Uh-huh.
and then how it shifted in the early 2000s. And like I can remember like my first phone was a Nokia 3410.
Oh yeah.
Right, yeah, yeah, like the classics. And I remember. See, the thing is about my generation, right, millennials. We grew up with technology, but it hadn't taken over our lives. It was just there. It was like, oh, this is cool, but it's not life. It's just it's on the side. Like things were very novel. Like you had YouTube and MySpace and all this, and it was great, but it wasn't like life. It was just a part of life.
Sure.
We
But
would.
now I would argue that y'all are split. So you have, I think, a very healthy attitude towards online behaviors. But I
Hope
think you
so.
know people like millennials that don't, right? That just like you were saying, that living vicariously online, measuring themselves against everybody else's highlight reel, like it's just that's terrible. Being enough older to just not have any fucks left to give is great. It's very freeing. But starting with about you and of course younger, I feel like it's just gotten worse and worse to like,
It's because social media is a lie, man. Like I
oh
just
yeah,
finished
absolutely.
watching. Do you know that? Have you heard the case of Gabby Petito
Oh
by
yeah.
chance?
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Big on
watched.
Netflix right now.
I think I'd heard about it before it came on Netflix, but I watched the documentary. Very well put together. It's interestingly. So she posted a video. She was one of these people that wanted to like sell everything and go live in a van and everything. I know you know the story, but for those that don't know, go check it out on Netflix. It's really good. Basically, she goes traveling with her partner, who's very clearly very possessive and abusive partner. I won't ruin too much, but there's a lot of instances where they could have caught it early and they didn't. Failures by the police, failures by friends and family, etc. It is what it is. But the interesting thing about that is that she was trying to be a blogger, like a video blogger, and she wanted to like feel and like when you look at what she was putting together, like it was pretty damn good. Like she had drones, she had like a decent camera, all of this stuff, and she threw it together.
Van life.
Yeah, put it online. It didn't really do much because there's a million people doing the same thing, and it takes time. I mean, God, I've been doing this 6 years, like you said earlier, and I'm still honing my craft. It's and I may never make it. Who knows? Who the fuck knows? But the point is, she was trying to show you like this is my life, isn't it great, isn't it amazing, this is what I do, and all the while she had this fucking awful relationship with her partner. But on social media you'd never know it. You'd think they were childhood sweethearts, everything's a fairy tale, it's all sunshine and daisies. And it wasn't. Unfortunately, it was a very abusive, horrible relationship. and he was jealous and possessive and a bit of a psycho, to be honest. Towards the end, it became quite clear, but they both tried to cover it up in different ways. So, like when you see the camera on him at points, sometimes because obviously there's a lot of unedited footage, he's like looking uncomfortable because he's realizing he has to watch his behavior so that he doesn't give away who he really is on camera, right? And she's also trying to kind of make sure, like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, so that it puts this particular image out to the world. Throwing that back to what we're talking about, like, what I gather from my generation is the people that get up too obsessed with social media are the people who, they struggle to make friends growing up. Fair enough, so did I. But, you know, that can lead to unhealthy habits sometimes, obsessions with things. It's very easy for human beings to obsess over things. That's just part of life. But when you obsess over something, over a fucking screen, like I see people all day live streaming and they're just sitting there like in their kitchen and just streaming all day, streaming and everything. There's people that are quote unquote successful on TikTok, live streamers who they record everything, they show everything. There are no limits. It's
Yeah.
like it's like Big Brother, like reality TV 24/7, and they don't see any issue with it. They don't see
Right.
any problem with it. And it's like, look, this TikTok thing will end just like all things end.
Oh, I hope so.
It will. It's a fad. Vine was a fad. YouTube's had its day. It's kind of dead now. It's all owned by the corporations. Like everything has its time, and then you move on. And the thing is, with human beings, if you don't embrace change, if you don't embrace the fact that things come and go, and that the only real thing that's ever constant is humans, human interaction, love, all these experiences, these things. These are the things that matter, right? But
So that
people,
brings me to my theory of why things have gotten so bad. And I think it is people are, by and large, more uh, likely to embrace a pleasant lie than a difficult truth,
why do you think
right?
that is?
Because the choice between like that quick hit of pleasure or the work that leads to long-term satisfaction. And
Yeah.
right, and so come back to your podcast, right? Your podcast is not designed to be surface level, quick cut. Like you don't have that thumbnail that every YouTuber has where it's like,
Fucking hate
right?
that.
Of
And
course.
I'm guilty for trying it in the past, but then I just watched. One thing I've noticed, real quick, just side note, there's
Sure.
a few
It's all side note
YouTubers.
there.
It's also no. There's a bunch of YouTubers that do this where they use like the same five thumbnails and
Yeah.
like different
Oh yeah.
like they just took a bunch of photos. So they looked at a camera, took a bunch of photos, like ah, and then they put those into every single thumbnail depending on what the emotion or what the story is.
Yep.
And I don't know, it just kind of fucks me off for some
No, and
reason.
that's good, but it's also you're going down the harder path, right? You're going down the path of deep meaning and connection, right? As much as you can do within 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever. But I think that that is longer lasting, right? You're creating things that it doesn't matter when somebody goes back and listens to it, it's still going to be relevant. Like you're talking about people's true human experience, the challenges they face, and the challenges, they might have different names or different root causes, but they're all the same, right? Struggle for survival, struggle to express yourself, creativity that seems to be unappreciated. Like there's some themes, if you go back and look at your back catalog, that keep coming up over and over and over again, that you could go back to the 1800s and people be saying the same thing, right? You'll go forward to 2050s, 2060s, and it'll still be relevant because it is actually real. And it's hard to get attention for real, that people are very resistant to real because it's hard and it looks like work. It forces them to think and question themselves instead of just this escapism of, oh, I can watch 30 seconds of somebody doing stupid shit and be like, oh, that's stupid shit. And then go to the next thing. Along with the apps that have been designed with a real scientific psychology basis, to trigger addiction, right? That, you're talking about like, humans obsessing about things. Yeah. And so folks really leaned into that and have made billions of dollars making things arguably worse, while almost every participant would say, oh my gosh, my life is so much better because I can watch these TikToks, until they get to the point where they're like, wait, where did my life go?
Oof. That is brutal to hear, but yeah, you're right, 1,000%. I think with what you were saying about like how people fear real, they fear introspection, looking at themselves, etc. I look at a lot of content that does well, things that do well, and it's always cash grabs, controversy. You know, there's only a few people that really stand out, or like trying to motivate people and really do something positive, like Tim Robbins, for example. I'm drawn to. I did a recent video about this, and it's something that's just stuck in my head, and I can't get it out of my head. So Timothy Chalamet won an award recently for acting. I think it was a Golden Globe, something like that. And he said that he was pursuing greatness. He wanted to be one of the greats, and he gave a bunch of examples of people he looks up to. He's inspired by. I could see it in his eyes, though. There's something there. There's like, and you see it sometimes in people that have something special, something to give. Like they're operating on a different level, and you can't touch them. You can't get to that level unless you work hard and realize your own greatness and potential. And most people are too fearful of that. Like the old saying, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of what you fear. It's that's what it is. I stopped giving a fuck a long time ago about what people think about, like, oh, the likelihood is this, oh, you probably never make it, blah, 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 blah. I always just think of the Han Solo quote, like, I like those odds. I like being the underdog. Fuck it. I like proving
Never
people
tell me the
wrong.
odds.
Yeah, I like being proving people wrong. I've had people doubt me since day one. It's nothing new. I don't care.
Oh, we're going to dig into that for a second, but
Yeah.
finish your thought because yeah, it's all side quests, but that one's a big one. But go ahead.
I know I have something to give, something
Oh yeah,
big.
absolutely. And you've already started. So, and that's what I was going to ask you about. And so somewhat challenge you on. So I can't wait to see how you respond to this. On the one hand, you don't care what people think. On the other hand, you can't wait to prove them wrong. Those two things are in conflict,
Yep.
right? Like, I'm not saying you have to choose one. I'm just pointing out that like those don't really mesh. And I understand that you can hold, two conflicting thoughts in your head at the same time. But which one do you believe more? Like, do you truly not care? In which case, you can't ever again say that you haven't made it, because that would mean that making it means that you do care, right? Again, you look at your back catalog, you've been doing something for 6 years, and you've been doing music for even longer. So those two things you've actually done, like not talked about it, not dreamed about it. You've probably done both of those things, but you actually did it. Like you can point to it and say, hey, I wrote this song. And I wrote this song, I recorded the song, I made a video, I'm making an album, all those things. Like it's legitimately there. And if you don't care, then that's all that matters. Or it is totally okay to care, but I'm I'm suspicious that that conflict causes you like kind of internal pain, because you feel like things aren't right. Whereas me from the outside looking at what you've done, I'm like, man, this guy is like super impressive. Like actually doing it and doing it well. Just because it hasn't become a commercial success yet, I would say doesn't mean that you haven't made it. It just means that the commercial potential hasn't been realized. But that's different from not having made it, because you've made things. You created things that will be around for a long time.
Do I care about what people think? Not really. I care about what I think.
Good.
I take on board feedback from friends, people I trust. I always take criticism. Always can grow, get better. If you think that your work is done, then you failed. So you always have to try and get better. What you have to understand is that success to me is doing all of these things for a living. Like the reality is, you want to know how my life is? I'll tell you how my life is. I'm broke as shit. This month, I need to raise like, I don't know how much money in the next 2 weeks, or I'm going to go into my overdraft. I'm paying off debts. I've got other debts that I've had for years. You know, I am the true definition of a struggling artist in every sense of the word. I knew that going in. I knew what it would look like. I didn't realize that I would get to the point where I struggled to like have enough money to eat and stuff like that, and sometimes I have to go out without food and shit. I didn't realize I'd get that bad. But you know, it's nothing new in my life. I've been there, done that, worn the t-shirt time and time again. I'm not saying this, by the way, for anyone to pity me or feel sorry for me. I chose this. I chose a difficult life, and I knew what would come with it. I knew that. Problem is, my life looks like this. 10% of the time, I get to do what I love. I'll do a podcast with a stranger from across the world and learn something and be inspired and have the motivation to keep going. I'll do amazing live streams with people and, entertain people, inspire people, give people a reason to keep going, stuff like that, meaningful stuff. I'll put my music out there and get on stage and feel like I'm alive for 15 minutes. Then I go home, and then that's the other 90%. Desperately trying to find work, working in minimum wage jobs, getting taxed out of my arsehole to the point where I don't even have enough money to make it work, and I have to find alternative means. My life is literally just running around, bouncing between things, trying to find an opportunity anywhere just to survive. Not even to grow or push things forward, but just to survive.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is progress. My goal is to do this for a living. And I don't feel any closer to that goal than I did, say, 3 years ago, 6 years ago. The only difference now is that I don't worry about whether or not I'm good enough. I know I'm fucking good enough. I know I fucking deserve it. Now, I don't know. I get fate, luck, I don't know, universe mocking me, penance for a previous life. I don't fucking know. Like, I'm just trying to survive. And quite frankly, if there is a God, I'm angry at God, to be honest. I'm like, where the fuck do you get off putting me through this much shit for so long? Like, haven't I learned enough? Haven't I suffered enough? Like, what do I have to do? Have a fucking breakdown and nearly die before you give me a chance? I get occasional lifelines sometimes, and amazing support networks, people that really, really, really help, amazing people. But they can't do anything. They can't help me, and they want to, but it's one of those things. It's fate. It's who knows if someone's going to be successful. You need luck. God knows you need money, man. You need so much money, connections, people to take a chance on you. People rarely, you want to know why you see the same fucking faces in movies all the time? It's because there's fucking hundreds of thousands of good actors out there, but the companies are not willing to give them a chance. They're not willing. They'd rather just give the same roles to like 5 people that they trust because they know they can make money with them.
Oh yeah, and that's an important thing to realize, that the A-listers, it's not that they're bad actors. I don't want to
No. Amazing,
but it's not that they get the job because they're a better actor. It's
nope.
that they get the job because they will sell tickets, right? So that's really the job at that level. And
dude, like, sorry to interject, but I just got to throw this in there as well. Like, I've heard that there's like directors now, casting agents, that will only book actors based on how many fucking followers they have on social media, which doesn't mean anything. It's bollocks. PewDiePie has like 100 million subscribers, and was it like 5% of those, or 10% or something, actually watches videos? Like, social media follows don't mean anything. I've got 1,600 followers on Instagram. Of that, I'm lucky if I get maybe like 30 people check out what I do. And of those 30, even real life people that I know have no idea that I nearly did 300 episodes, or that I'm releasing an album, or that I'm even an actor. They're like, wow, really? Like, people don't fucking interact with things in the way that you think they do. you know. And that's why having a follower, having like a community, people that actually follow what you do is so valuable. You know, I've seen a couple of videos online about this, which is like really awesome to see. It's like people go, "Oh, I've only got like 5, 10 followers," right? But if you had those 5, 10 followers in a room sitting there watching you, giving a shit about what you do, trust me, that means the world. That's better than having no one. Like, dude, I did the open mic light last night. I do it every Wednesday. I do the sound for it, help it out with my friend who hosts it. We have a great time. I always get a slot, get some free drinks. Great, everyone's happy, right? I get on the stage. I'm very confident on stage. I don't have any issues. I just play. I played some Johnny Cash. I played some Doors. I played my songs from my album. Talked to the audience a little bit. I can't count how many times I was talking to the audience and I said something or I finished the song and it's like fucking radio silence, golf claps, nothing. Like there was one point I was like, "Oh, who likes the Doors?" And silence, and I was like, guess nobody. Well, fuck it. Here we go. And like you just roll with it. Like you can't get upset by that. Like I've been in that position so many times over the years that it's funny. It is funny. Like it's if there's a universe or a god, they've got a really fucking twisted sense of humor, and I find it funny as well. I'm like, lol. Like I played my last gig with my last metal band when I was growing up to the fucking sound engineer. I shit you not. After 3 years, like solid crafting, we just played to the sound engineer. Like, life is funny, man. You just have to laugh and keep going.
Okay, so you had a whole bunch in there. The first thing I'll point out is you're talking about how you feel like you haven't made progress, but you have made progress, right? 6 years ago, you hadn't been doing it for 6 years and you arguably didn't deserve anything, right? And you fast
Ooh.
forward to today and you
Fair
can
enough.
argue that you might deserve something now, right? That you have put in the work. So, and who knows? Like it's kind of like bamboo, right? Bamboo grows underground for like 5 years, and then all of a sudden it shoots up like 30 feet in the course of 90 days. Like it's just craziness. So everybody jokes about like, after 10 years it became an overnight success. I think that'll happen for you at some point because again, you have like legitimate skill and you are doing the work. I can't tell you when, right? That's the real bitch of it is I don't know how long you have to hold on. But the other thing that you mentioned that I really want to focus on is you're talking about how you have the stereotypical, the cliche struggling artist life that you chose. And that's one of the things that I keep coming back to time and time again, especially when things are hard. I like to describe it as being the right kind of hard, that I'll take difficulties that I choose over difficulties that I feel are foisted upon me, because at least then I have the agency to say, yeah, I chose this and this is hard because of the choices I made. And if I want things to be different, then I can make different choices, right? So my partner Elizabeth, when you contacted first, and we have a bunch of like these short phrases that come up over and over and over again from the things that we read. And one of them is we ask each other, okay, how are you being complicit in creating the circumstances you claim to no longer want to be a part of, right? And that's how we just kind of snap out of like, oh, it all comes down to you. You have more control than you think, even at the times when it feels that you don't. And I understand that there are externalities that are truly beyond your control, but that's almost never what somebody is talking about. It might be that point in time, what they're focused on. But then as you go back, it's like, yeah, and here's how you end up in that position. This is not to say that everyone's to blame for their own circumstances. It's just for you in particular, because you're very self-aware. Like, I mean, you say constantly, like, I've chosen this. This is hard, but this is what I want, etc. That is great because if you don't have that, then you would feel hopeless and helpless, right? You would feel like you are out of control. Right now, you are struggling and you feel like you want something to be different, but you also accept that this is the life you chose. Before we were talking about your job, and that was the wrong kind of hard, right? That for whatever reasons, it was the wrong kind of hard. And now what you have right now is like legit hard. Never going to dispute that, but is the right kind of hard for right now.
I don't know that I've spoken about this, but that job, I've spoken about the job and everything, but this specific element, I came to my girlfriend like, I don't know, a few weeks before. There was a conversation before I started this job, and she had a really good feeling about it. I had a good feeling about it. Other people did. The reason I took the job, it was a full-time job. I took it to get some stability because I was really struggling, to the point, same as position as I am now, like no food, no regular income, too intermittent, not enough to like plan around basically. And it was really starting to stress me out and make me ill and stuff, right? And like we kind of spoke about it, and she was like, well, maybe it's worth like, getting something more, I don't know, substantial or like locked in, some regular, like some confirmed income, basically. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I know. I've been applying for like 6 months because that's the job market here. And I got a degree, experience. I've worked every kind of job you can imagine. Like, it's ridiculous at this point. Marketing, sales, recruitment, customer service, retail, bartending, barista, like every washing dishes. I've done it. So anyway, I I take this job and I'm thinking, yeah, some stability. Yeah, okay, great. And then I can work on weekends and also do my stuff on weekends and do stuff in the evenings. It's really fucking naive. One thing I've realized about myself is that I'm not supposed to live a conventional life. I've been there, I've done it. It's not who I am. It's not what I'm supposed to do. And not because I'm special or like the rules don't apply to me or whatever. But I think in life, you should try things to see how it feels for you and it works for you. And the thing I always hear when people are calling me crazy, when they're saying like, well, why wouldn't you just do this? It would make your life easier. It's because I can't tell you how fucking miserable it makes me knowing that I have to go somewhere and I have to be somewhere. Like, it's bad enough having to do stuff you don't want to do for a living just to make ends meet. But at least having the flexibility and the control of your time, control of your life, gives you like something. It gives you something, some semblance of control, some semblance of freedom. When I went to that job every single day, and there's a long list of reasons why, it was a toxic workplace, this, that, and the other. The other aspect to it was I felt trapped. I fucking hated just going in the office and then leaving at 5. Like it just dragged on forever, and it felt
On kind of
mon-
hard.
yeah. But it was more than that. It was like I was like, I feel like I've made a mistake because I don't have control anymore. I don't have my time anymore.
Right.
At
You
least
gave up your agency, right? And
exactly. Yeah.
wait, a moment ago when you said that you're talking about the rules don't apply to you and you don't feel that way, what I usually tell people when I hear something like that is maybe what you've realized is that the game is rigged. And so you look at the rules and you're like, yeah, even if I play by these, I'm still fucked. So why don't I not do that and maintain the same level of being fucked, but at least on my own terms, where I have a chance? Because I think a lot of people have bought into, kind of the broken bargain, the big lie of, oh yeah, you go and you do your job and you keep your head down and everything's fine. And that is, again, it's one of those pleasant lies instead of the unpleasant truth of, yeah, you can be, yeah, I guess you guys call it made redundant, right? You can be
Yep.
laid off
Hmm.
at any point for reasons you don't understand. Like, so I live in the US and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, the headlines are to the point where you understand here the chaos and the getting fired from left field in areas that you would never guess. Like, just like people are essentially waking up to an email that says this is the last email you'll have access to, and you're out. That kind of chaos.
Yeah, and that's crazy as well because it's one thing to make someone redundant and be like, "Hey, sorry, we're having to make cuts, etc. Here's your severance." Da 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 da. Right? But to wake up to a fucking email that says you no longer have access, you are no longer part of the company. Is that legal? Can you do that? That's fucked. What do you
Well,
mean?
that's why it's super chaotic, because the argument from on top is when I do it, it's not illegal, right? This is Nixon all over again. And we don't have to go down the politics route because there's enough podcasts that do that. But just know that, like, it's really easy to look at what's happening in the US because it's so clear, but it's just more clear than what's happening kind of everywhere in the world, where coming back to what you said about like it takes money to do, anything. It's not just that, it's that once you have some money, then there's a different set of rules that apply. And again, especially here in the US, the golden rules become if you have the gold, you make the rules. And so the rules keep changing and going against the vast majority of people. I mean, that's the talk about wealth inequality, concentration of wealth, and that sort of thing. What it means is there's a small-ish group of people that the rules don't apply to, that keep changing the rules to keep it that way. A lot of people who are struggling, and you feel that just it's pervasive. And there's that sense of, well, why is that? It's a sense of, again, confusion, lack of agency, whatever. With your self-awareness, at least you can see what is happening and choose to like not participate in the pleasant lie and go with your current hard truth. That's my little armchair analysis.
Maybe. I mean, it's not like I didn't try to get like marketing jobs on my terms, like freelance, whatever, part time. I have tried. It's just, yeah, they always seem to just want you to like. Look, the reality is, if you're doing a standard job, you're selling your time. People don't like to hear that, but that's the truth. Tell me I'm
Sure.
wrong. Tell me when I'm telling lies. You're selling your time, and in general, there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's how we make money in the world. You say like, hey, I will give you X amount of time and work for you if you give me X amount of money. That's the contract.
Mhm.
Now, of course, it's not the only way to make money though. This is the thing. Like when I when I look at like how I've survived for like the last 3.5 years or whatever it's been, it's kind of crazy, but it's taken a lot of adjustment. But it's opened my eyes to the fact that like there's more than one way to make money. There's more than one way to survive, you know. But you have to adjust and adapt. And it's like Bruce Lee says, like be like water, like don't stop resisting, go with the waves, and you'll be fine. It might be harder. There might be some ripples. You might get a bit wet, but you'll be all right. Like even right now, like I'm broke as shit. I don't know when my next meal is going to be, but I'll be all right. I've been here before. You know.
So I think that brings us to our main theme about work, the thing that I was really excited to talk about. And we've built it up to this point. So I spent a long time telling pretty much everyone I knew that I thought everyone should work for themselves. And I faced a ton of resistance. And so I listened to the criticisms like you do. And I said, okay, people are not receptive to that message. And so my new crusade is telling everyone that they do work for themselves, whether they admit it or not. So even if you have a job, or what one of my friends calls a job job, meaning that like you're working for someone else, okay, you're still working for yourself. It's just that's your client. And you might have a shitty client, which you had recently, and you might decide, hey, this is not worth it, right? The squeeze isn't worth the juice. With you in particular, you have a bunch of different avenues of the second thing I want to talk about, which is what work really is. And that is creating and capturing value. And there's two parts to it. There's the creating value and there's capturing it. When we were talking earlier about all the surface level online stuff, what we generally react against is this flip to the capturing value part, where you're talking a previous podcast about a YouTuber and everything is sponsored all the time, like his entire life sponsored. Yeah, that's a dude who is just capturing value. Whether he's actually creating it or not becomes the argument, right? So you can take the artist perspective saying, yeah, that's not art, that's soup, right? Right? The Warhol painted the Campbell's cans, that was art. But then you have the Campbell's can, that's soup. But he made a game out of capturing value, and that's the game that he's playing. And on his terms and in his definition, he's winning. And you might look at that and almost have a degree of pity of like, man, what a shallow, well-paid life you live. And that is a perfectly legitimate opinion. right? Other people will have other opinions. So bring it back to you. You have lots of ways that you are creating value, and the capturing side is missing, right? You are a struggling artist because the capturing part is the part that hasn't worked. And I know that you focus a lot on the creating of value. You do just a lot of work. You run an open mic night. Like, you want to talk about a thankless task, right? Like, you probably don't realize that there's more appreciation than you think for doing that, but far less than you deserve. But you're still doing it. You're creating that value. There's no value to capture because it's very hard to monetize an open mic night, but it gives you something that like feeds your soul, that you get to see and support other people who are doing things. You're living the way that you believe. So just to cap that off and pass the conch back to you, I think that once folks start thinking about work in terms of the value they're creating and the value that they're capturing, if they take a hard look at themselves, they'll realize that most people are in a very tenuous position where they're selling their time, and that becomes easily replaceable, especially now in the age of AI, where, oh, you're selling me something where I'm paying you for 4 hours that I can now do in 30 seconds with an LLM or whatever. And the deal is about to get even worse for a whole bunch of folks who believe that they've done their part. And the question that I have now, just in general, is what they're going to do, along with how they're going to react. So, like, this seems to me to be one of those waves, very similar to when I was a programmer in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the world went flat and my job went to a foreign country. I had the wherewithal to say, look, that if it can be done there for cheaper, then it's not my job anymore. My job is to do something else. But when you have this mass of people who are about to be de-desked, made redundant, beached, however you want to phrase it, kind of in mass, I can't imagine what that's going to look like.
Well, everyone who planned will be able to, ride through the seas. They'll be all right. And everyone who didn't plan is fucked. And it'll be
Yeah.
like, sorry to put it so harshly, but like yourself, I've seen the writing on the wall before. I remember I was doing a marketing job years ago, and there was a big focus on using platforms like Power BI and stuff like that. Basically, they were trying to set up platforms that would automatically receive and correlate data and use it, which is absolutely the right thing to do. It takes means that you don't have people actively working on the data themselves, and that's time consuming. But my job was actively involved in that, at collecting data manually. And as
Mhm.
soon as I saw all that happening, which wasn't even in my department, it was in like a connected department, I was like, within 6 months, I don't have a job. Like, I was just like, there's just no way. And so there was other reasons why I quit, but like that was a big one. Like, I was like, and even the fact that before I left, they were putting me onto other projects and stuff. Like, I could tell they didn't want to get rid of me, but they knew that my job was redundant for sure.
Right. And hearing it's not personal, it's just business doesn't make it suck much less.
Well, I think the only element to that sucks is when you're not figured in. Like, a human being has so much to offer, and this is one of the reasons why I've worked tirelessly making myself as valuable as possible in every sense of the word. Like, so even in jobs that I don't care about, like hospitality and stuff, and I know that sounds harsh for anyone who's listening who knows me personally, it's not that I don't put the effort in, but if you see me on stage, if you see me acting, doing podcasts, this is everything I have to give, right? I feel it in my heart, in my soul. Let's start singing that song in a sec. But like when I'm doing like hospitality or whatever, like there's always part of me that's holding back because it's a role. It's just a thing I have to do. I don't want to be there. I hate the way people look at me. I hate the way people judge me and shit for it. And I said earlier that I didn't give a fuck about what people think, right? Yeah, that's true. But it still doesn't make it pleasant when people are staring at you and clearly like talking down to you. That really drives me nuts because I'm like, I'm not a fucking idiot. Don't talk down to me. I'm doing this because I
Right.
have to. not because I'm a fucking idiot and I have to be here. Like, there's a big difference. But the point is, the point I'm losing my, I digress. You have to create value. You have to identify opportunities for yourself. Like, take that open mic as a perfect example, right? I don't get paid for it. I saw an opportunity. There was a sound engineer leaving. I've covered the host a bunch of times and gotten paid in the past. I've gotten gigs through her. Like we're good friends. We hang out, all this shit. When he left, I was like, and I approached her and I said, "Hey, I know I'm probably not going to be able to get paid. You never know, future. And there's been a few times recently where I have got a little bit of money. So she helps me out where she can. There was never any expectation on my part. I just said, hey, tell you what, because you're having to do the work of two people, why don't I come in? I'll shadow a bit. I'll learn the sound. Just give me free drinks and a spot every week, and I'll be here." And she was like, "Cool." Now, people have called me a mug. People have called me an idiot for taking that deal. They're like, "That's stupid. You're not earning any money." Like, I even asked a friend, and he's like, "Yeah, maybe." Part of me is like, "Yeah, I'm not getting paid." The other part of me is like, sometimes you have to take a hit and look at what the future holds. Through
Sure.
this, now I can do sound. Now I can take that skill and use that elsewhere. I meet musicians every week. I make connections. I get a free slot to promote myself. 15 minutes on stage where I can just talk. And I tend to get more time than that anyway. But like, this is the thing. People are too obsessed with, does this make me money or not?
Right. And not all compensation is monetary. Like, I mean, you need some, but one of my good friends and former colleagues was a Marine. And he's like, yeah, I didn't make much money as a Marine, but I got to use an automatic grenade launcher. And let me tell you, like, there's nothing like that. Like just thunk, 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 thunk. He said, yeah, like I would pay now to be able to recapture that feeling because I was making squat and yet I got to do these things I wouldn't do any other way. Yours is very similar, except fewer explosions and less violence, but you get to do something that many people don't get to do. You got to learn some things, whatever. And you're back to that creating value without the capturing part. But explicitly, I'm not trying to capture money from that right now, or maybe not even in the future, but it might lead to something else.
You said, what do I care about most? Like capturing value, creating things. Absolutely. Like, look, if I just had enough to survive, right? I don't have to be rich. I don't have to be famous. I don't care about any of that. Like, yeah, I want more money so I can do shit. It's frustrating not being able to do shit. It makes me sad. But yeah, I mean, that's like whenever I see my girlfriend, like, even if we're broke, we still just have fun and do stuff. Like, you don't need much to be happy. The thing that frustrates me is that you need money to do like literally anything. Like, you want to build something, give me money. You need I need some new microphones. Guess what? Money. You need a new camera. Yeah. Pay me the money. Like, it's all about money. That's all it ever fucking is. And then even if when you've got the money, you still need connections. You still need people to give a shit. People say like 300 episodes, Christian. How come this podcast isn't making money? How come it's not successful? I don't know. I've tried. I've
It's the
tried
thumbnails.
everything.
All you need is we've
Who
already covered
knows? Yeah,
that.
maybe. But
Problem solved.
it could be any number of factors. It could even just be fucking pure luck. Who knows? But the thing is, like, it's never been about money or fame or anything for me or attention. I don't care about any of that. I just want to do creative stuff for a living. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, excited to do all this stuff and not dreading the fucking day. That's it. That's a reasonable goal. That's a fair goal. That's an
Fair
achievable
ask.
goal. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I know absolutely what you mean. And so I'll give you a choice here. We can go down the rabbit hole of
Uh,
inequality and how there is enough for everyone. It's just unevenly distributed, or dealer's choice. You can take us in a completely different direction. You had the whole thing in notes. Like, go ahead. It's your show.
that's mean, man. Because
It's the Christian Reeve show, not the Jay Grieves show.
I feel like we're on to something, and ah, let's you take it, man. Let's go. Let's keep going.
All right.
Like,
So let's briefly talk about inequality, which is a lot of what you're speaking of. And it's hard when so few have so much and so many are struggling for survival. Like, and I'm preaching this position in the middle. So software has been pretty good to me. And I arguably live the life that you're talking about, where I get to choose what I work on. There's enough money, and I don't have to worry about the struggle anymore. In my 20s, that was different. And not only was it different, but I think it was required. I don't really come from money, but we didn't struggle. My dad was a college professor. But early on, when they did their wills, they made it such that my sister and I would receive nothing until we turned 30, unless it was to pay for education, because they did not want to deprive us of the struggles of our 20s. And don't get me wrong, I always
What
had
a
a
great,
safety
great
net.
gift that was. Thanks, mum and dad.
Well, it is. And if you look at
Yeah.
anybody who has been raised with money, most of them get ruined, right? I mean, and then like if you want to take it to its logical conclusion, then there's the US presidency. We can say that's what happens when somebody's never been told no, when somebody's never had to really struggle. Like that's how things go off the rails. But again, we're not going to go down that hole.
I will
But
say
coming back,
this, like, and yeah, I don't talk politics, but I do think it's interesting from a business perspective that every single business venture Trump has done has been a failure. I do think that says a lot. And it's funny because he has this, perception which was created by The Apprentice and stuff, like the art of the deal, all this. And I'm like, it just feels like a fallacy. It's like, how can you like promote this idea like, oh, he's a cutting edge businessman, successful businessman. This is a guy you want to be like. And yet every one of his businesses has failed. Like gone
so
bankrupt, to be clear.
that's where we get back to what's the stick you're measuring with. Like he has
Well, in
he has plenty of
business,
money. It didn't fail for him. It just
dude,
screwed everybody else.
in business, okay. Some things in life like should be measured by money and stuff like that. Like business should be measured by the profit that you make.
Okay, we're going to
Simply
go
put.
into that because I first of all disagree, and secondly, will hold that up as the reason why you're struggling. Like not you personally, but like anybody who is getting screwed by the deal being broken, because I don't think that that's the only way to measure a business. And I'll hold up Dan Price. Like
Well,
I don't know if you
it
know
depends
about him in
what the
Seattle.
business is producing. I mean, like that doesn't take into account, for instance, not profits. Non-governmental organizations and
No,
shit.
no, no. I'm
Like,
talking about standard business because if you say that the profit is how you measure it, then, and that's largely true, by the way, then the incentive is to pay people absolutely as little as possible to cut every corner, to do like, keep in mind that without
well, that's
laws,
business
we would
ethics.
put
That's different.
children into factories still.
That's business ethics. Like, okay, if we're talking that, then companies don't have to do that. They choose to do that because they want the maximum level of profit. Like, to be clear, I'm not saying that businesses should do everything possible to raise the margin so high that they're paying people peanuts or taking illegal labor or whatever. Like,
But that's what's
I don't.
happened.
Right, but I don't agree with that. I've never agreed with that. That's a choice. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I'm working for this company in their headquarters. I'm doing like what was it, like an internship, very brief, a few weeks or a month or something like that. I got to look at their pricing lists, internal documents. So like what it cost them to produce something, what they sold it at wholesale for, what they sold it at retail for.
Mhm.
The product they were selling, fuck it, I'll just say it, suitcases. It was suitcases. And they were producing them for like, let's say like somewhere between £1 to £5 per unit, right? Wholesale, they sold it maybe like 20, 30 per unit. You want to take a guess at how much they sold it at retail for?
60 or 100, right? Like somewhere in there.
£220.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Now, here's the thing, right? It's cost them £1 to £5 per unit to make. Anything above £5 is profit because five is break even, right? My point with this is your margin doesn't have to be that high. When you raise it that far, it means that's all you care about is the maximum level of profit you can make that's justifiable against your brand. And to some extent, I understand like you lock in a certain degree of value in a product. That's how Apple is able to charge so much. Is it worth the prices that you're paying? Absolutely fucking not. But they've managed to build up their brand equity so much that you the people will buy into that. You'll buy into this idea. And often you're not buying the product, you're buying the brand. Now, with many companies, as you said, those examples that cut corners, they deliberately pay their staff minimum wage. They don't have to do that. Yeah, they don't have to do that. They shouldn't do that. If we're bringing ethics into the conversation, should people be paid more? Absolutely. For the level of like on the low level, the level of work that you put in and how much you get back, it's a fucking joke, man. It's a fucking joke. Like I work at a hotel, right? They earn crazy amounts of money, like insane amounts of money, right? We all get paid like a little bit more than minimum wage. It's fine. Yeah, there's free food, a few benefits. It's a decent workplace, but I still look at it and I'm like when they're talking about like, oh well, we don't have money to fix this thing, or we don't have money to fix this thing, and it's like you just don't want to spend the money, you know.
Right.
Or like when they're talking about pay rises, like in April we're supposed to get a general pay rise, which goes in. It's a governmental thing, so it goes up with inflation, and then because we earn more than minimum wage, we would expect to get a little bit more as well, right? Now, the April pay rise thing that goes up every year is pointless because it goes up with inflation, but prices go up anyway, so you don't notice the difference. So it's a waste of time, right?
Mhm.
Getting a little bit more than minimum wage is great. It adds up, but at the end of the day, it's still the bare minimum. And when you look at like not only the work you put in, but how you are essentially a brand representative. You know, if you work in a customer facing position, if you're doing marketing, if you're doing sales, if you're doing anything where you're representing the company, fuck, even if you go to like those trade conferences or whatever, and you're not like an active sales member of the team, but you're still representing the company, they're still relying on you. You say the wrong thing, stocks can plummet, people leave, problems happen. So there's a lot of equity in you representing the company in the right way. Every time I walk clients around, it's not my job to do that, but I know how to do it. I know what to do. Sometimes, if a manager's not around, I'll do it. And I recognize the value in that and why it's important and how it makes us look and everything in between, right? You just do what's necessary. And sometimes you do a little bit more than what's necessary. That's, the classic going above and beyond, right? But do you get the money back for that? Do you get what you should really get back for that? No, of course you don't, because companies want to make an insane amount of profit.
Right. And you are, again, a hard worker. And I'm guessing that you would take a fair deal. That even the job you just left, if the job you just left treated you as they could and arguably should, and paid you what they could, and again, arguably should, then chances are you'd still be there. And yet they can fill your seat because times are hard everywhere. They can squeeze people who they see as being interchangeable, disposable, which is just a terrible way to view people, right? That, everybody's special in their own way, right? Everybody has this unique collection of experiences and mental models and opinions and whatever. So we all bring something to the table. And over time, what has happened is the companies took a little bit more and the workers got a little bit less. And the workers were like, oh, this kind of sucks. And so they gave a little bit less. And the companies were like, well, this is bullshit. It's really hard to manage them. So they took a little bit more. And this whole thing just spiraled down to where you get, terms like quiet quitting, right? I'm just going to go in and collect my money. And if you think about it, quiet quitting is terrible because that doesn't do anybody any good. And yet I can't actually argue against it because I'm not like, no, 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 you should really like be giving your all to the man. Like again, the deal's broken. And so that's where I come back to working for yourself and creating value, understanding the value that you provide. And it's not just hours, right? Sometimes you're paid for the hours, but it's what you do within the hours that really matters, including when you're not actually doing the other side, the capturing the value for that. Like that's where you get your standard minimum wage jobs. And by the way, I think a lot of people talk, especially here in the US, they talk about like low skilled jobs, and they're not low skilled, they're low pay, right? They are difficult jobs that most executives could not do.
100%. Yeah.
And yet the terminology is what is used to forgive the executives use to forgive themselves for taking so much. Oh, well, we're not going to pay more than $15 an hour or whatever because that's a low skill job when it's not. And then you flip it around with, and I happen to think that executive pay packages are absolutely out of control. Like when you see the charts of like the spread between the lowest paid and the highest paid and how it just diverges. And that's not to say that executives are useless. No, I understand again from the inside out what it takes to do executive level thinking and planning and risk taking and all that kind of stuff. Executives deserve to make money, but there's a limit, right? There's a limit, and that's actually part of how my partner and I run our business. That we deliberately don't make software that is designed to be addictive and just extract value from people. We want to provide the value. So there's like that back to that ethics part, along with we want to pay people a rate that we are proud of. Like we want the people that we hire to be able to take time off, to be able to spend time with their family, to take vacations, what have you. And we don't look for the absolute lowest price. We're looking for somebody who really wants to do the things that we need them to do, along with a little bit of judgment and attitude and whatever of helping us. And so we've created a deal that we feel very comfortable with. Like a lot of the people that work for us, they are freelancers or contractors, but they've been here for years because they fit. They understand that we mean it when we say, hey, you have a lot of latitude in your decision making, and if you make a decision that we don't agree with, then we're not going to like yell at you. We're going to say, oh, next time please do this. It's a learning opportunity. And part of it is the software we build is business software. We're not doing like flight control systems or medical devices or anything like that. Like we can mess up and it's like an annoyance. It's not death defying. So we want people to fit our work into their life. And the other thing is we're completely asynchronous. Like you're talking about like going someplace, having to be someplace. We don't have that at like literally at all. And there are times when I work from here. There are times when I work when I'm traveling. There are times when our people are like, hey, I'm going to travel and I'm offline. Great, no problem. Or I'm going to travel, but I'm still going to keep working. Yeah, that's your call. Go for it. We want the work delivered. I know that not every job lends itself to that. And so part of what I found was how I wanted to live and work. And I did that for myself. It was just me for a long time. So I've been doing this like my company, Echo Rouge, for about 15, 16 years. In the beginning, it was just me. It was a way for me to work as a contractor or a freelancer and have a way to bill. And then eventually I took some of that money, hired somebody else, and I spent years hiring bad people and learned how to find the good ones. That
Yeah.
it's a skill. At this point, I feel like I can hire freelancers from around the world better than almost anybody. And even more importantly, I can sort them really quickly as to whether they're going to last or not. And if they do last, then I make the deal that I would want. It's a very golden rule type thing. Like I'm treating them the way I want to be treated. I will pay them enough that they don't have to struggle. Like I'm proud that my people don't struggle. So I know covered a lot of ground. Stop there. Pass it back to you because the Christian Reeve Show.
you're coaching people with programming and to live that freelance lifestyle. And I get it from like a business perspective. Just in general, like I agree. I've always felt that working for yourself is a better option. It's harder, like your work is not always guaranteed, but if you're proactive and you're on top of it, you can get a regular income. I mean, I think I've proven that in my life that like as long as you just constantly put yourself out there, constantly try to get opportunities, work will come your way, money will come your way. But specifically within the field of programming, obviously AI is actively taking jobs because you don't necessarily need people to program code anymore. You can get AI to do that for you. So now you've got this less programmers making code and more programmers doing quote unquote engineering, which for those who don't know is basically designing the input that goes in to the AI, basically telling it what to do. So prompt is like, yeah, make this code for me based on X, Y, Z.
Yeah, it's gonna be
So,
a fun one.
so obviously you still have to have a knowledge of coding in order to do that, but that means that like there's now a whole subsection of the jobs gone. So if there was say 200 jobs, coders, they've all gone, and now you've got maybe like 20 prompt engineers.
That's a great way of phrasing it. So I want to go back to my job going overseas, right? It's not my job anymore. So the the stuff that AI and LLMs can write, that's not your job anymore. And I want to go one step further. Remember, everybody works for themselves. That's my new mantra. Like you once you admit that, once you acknowledge that, then you can start to see your employer or employers as your clients, and you get to choose how you conduct yourself. Related to that, and what I really, really want people to understand is everyone's a manager. And sometimes you only have a staff of one. Sometimes you're just managing yourself. If you accept that you are a manager and you look at yourself as both a manager and an employee, the first thing you'll probably realize is that you're not a very good manager and you're not a very good employee. And that's okay, right? That self-awareness is a good first step, right? Step
I'm
one,
the
admit you're
best manager. I don't know what you're talking about, Jay.
right, but you have a horrible employee.
Yeah, I'd fire him tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. So let's say that you can buy into to my thesis that everyone's an employee and self-employed and everybody's a manager. Okay, now throw AI into the mix. Now you have an electronic staff who really wants to please you, doesn't talk back, shows up on time, works really quickly, whatever. If you see yourself as a manager using these electronic employees, right, agents and LLMs, et cetera, to help you create value, and keep in mind, still your job to capture value. And as we've touched on a bunch of times, capturing value is fucking hard. Like so many people think the hard part is creating value. That's not it. Like, again, your case study that the amount of work that you've put in your music is absolutely dwarfed by the amount, or it dwarfs the amount of work people put into their regular job. And yet with the regular job, they're able to capture more value because they've bought into the lie. And really what they're doing is creating more value for someone above them. And one day the music stops and they realize the lie that they have bought into, and it becomes, this harsh truth being made redundant. Whereas if you are truly creating and capturing the value, then you control everything that you need to be able to control. And then you'll start to see all of these tools as growth opportunities. So as much as I think that AI is going to increase the amount of software that exists, I actually don't think that programmers are going away. And it's kind of like, the steam engine became more efficient and the demand for coal went up because then everybody could run a steam engine, right? So now that everybody can kind of start creating software, I think there's going to be a lot more software in the world. And I think for the most part, that's a good thing because a lot of what's written is going to be very bespoke. It's going to help a small number of people do something that was a real pain in the ass before. And they're going to treat that as their electronic staff, and they're going to be able to create more value. It's leverage. The big question is, what are we going to do in order to make sure that the value capture doesn't end up in the hands of the people who currently control so much wealth that they write the rules? That's the really hard part, and that's where I see this spread increasing.
I don't know if I've fully 100% grasped what you're proposing here, but like, I'm just gonna say it. Are you kind of saying, in a sense, that with the AI as it exists right now, a typical like programming job, like if you're working for a company, for argument's sake, is you come in and you'll be a prompt engineer. That'll be your job. If you're
Eh, that's
more
part
on
of
a
your job. That's the management part of your job. And
main aspect, right?
right, so that it's a mixture of prompting, and then there is still some hand coding, or you can set things up to where there's like no hand coding, and what happens is the equivalent of AI generated music, right? That, yeah, it's arguably music, but it's not particularly great. Whereas if you take a musician, and I can't wait to see what you end up doing with AI tools in your hands can really help you. And it doesn't matter if you see it now or not. It's just sort of like, I'm stating this as a fact. There are things that you need done that are going to be faster and cheaper with AI tools. They aren't going to replace you. They're going to augment you. It's like the suit that Ripley has in Alien to make her super strong and be able to throw the alien out the airlock.
So like what you were saying before about like programmers coming in, like programmers are not going away, and that there'll be more software, and that people will do bespoke stuff and whatnot. Like this brings about sort of an interesting point, because if the companies because the companies will always go for what's cheapest. It makes sense from a
Oh, yeah.
business perspective to go for AI over human beings, which is a crazy sentence, but that's the reality. It's software, you can use it, boom. Now I don't have to employ 100 people. I can just use AI and a few prompt engineers, right? Now,
Possibly. Yep.
with the people that are still programming, getting trained, the scale and the level is different. So maybe what will happen, I'm theorizing two options. Either one, AI is really cheap and you'll have a bunch of programmers who will try and undercut that price by saying, well, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm not AI, but I'll do it for cheaper, blah, blah, blah. Or AI will be more expensive. And so programmers can undercut in that sense, still make a decent living. And, you've got dedicated human beings working for you as opposed to AI, maybe.
Well, so the people are never going to be able to undercut the AI. That you never want to place that bet that
Well,
silicon's always going to be
monetarily
faster.
speaking, not they won't be able to match what AI
No, that's what I
does.
mean. Like monetarily,
Okay.
anytime you can replace a person with software, it pays to do so. Like it's almost impossible to go the other way. That's why I'm saying when you can, there are times when you shouldn't, and art is one of those areas where we can dabble in just a second. What I'm saying is, I want all of my people to use AI because it makes them better. It has them doing stuff faster. It means that they are each individual managers managing their electronic workforce, whether they realize it or not, but they are better and more productive using the AI. I'm not going to fire anybody. Instead, I'm going to continue growing. I'm just not going to hire anyone. That the job loss here at my company is the people I don't need to hire in the future. And what you're seeing, especially in big tech, right, where you see like tens of thousands being laid off. And believe me, I feel for those people too, because they bought into the deal like, hey, you do your work and you'll be fine. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, but now we have AI. And so the rules have changed, be on your way. What I want those people to do to the best of their ability is to then work for themselves, to then realize that hitching your wagon to a big company horse is no longer a really good idea for the most part. And it's a good idea for a small number of people. And those are the ones at the top that are making a fortune. But individually, I think most people are better off using these tools and being essentially a company of one. And now with all these tools, you can do so much that you don't have to be much bigger than a company of one. And by the way, when I say a company of one, when I talk about solopreneurs, I don't mean that you don't work with anybody else. I mean that you're working with other people who are freelancers and contractors and whatever, because they fulfill a thing that you need. And so you have a very clear agreement. Like that's where the deal gets back to being very, very honest. You do this thing, I'll pay you this money. Great. You did that thing, I pay you that money. And now we're done. Right. And that's where, again, big companies didn't really say the last part. They didn't say, oh, by the way, this will work great until we don't need you anymore, in which case all bets are off. Bye bye. And AI is making that happen at such a large scale that that's where I become concerned about the societal impact. Because as we saw with COVID, when you have a large number of people who are desperate and feel lack of agency, then they tend to react poorly. And I don't know what's going to be the trigger. So here in the US, George Floyd was a huge trigger. The reaction that we saw was almost certainly amplified by that pent up, we've been locked up, told what to do, we're scared, etc. I'm not saying that anything about whether the reaction was appropriate or not. I'm not going to sit here and argue that you should or shouldn't protest this horrific thing that happened. I'm saying that almost certainly the reaction we saw was amplified by people not needing to be at work, by people having been locked up and all this stuff. With the AI stuff, I think that it's going to simmer and then it's going to go wrong kind of all at once. I just don't know what's going to trigger it.
So, I said before that, like, I agree with your idea in principle about, autonomy and being a manager of yourself. Like, I get what you're saying, and I agree that like that's what people should aim for.
It's
Because you,
more of a mental model. It's like I can defend it because it's true. Like you have to manage yourself. You decide whether you go to work. You decide if you're going to do a good job, if you're going to be pleasant, or you decide it's the wrong place and you go somewhere else. So
yeah, but
that's
the flaw in this logic, though, is that it assumes that every human being, like, how can I put this? Some people just lack intuition. Some people lack like the ability to um to use their intuition to like when they're in a situation where they don't know what to do and they're like they won't sit there and reason it and go, well, I know this and I know this, so maybe I can do this, or they quote unquote wing it. Like there are people that have to be told what to do every single step, and there are
absolutely
people that will never be a manager or a business owner or whatever because they lack those skills. Now, I'm not
right.
saying that can't necessarily develop them. I mean, human beings develop themselves all the time, and we do amazing things when we do that. However, it goes beyond skill set. It's about like confidence. It's about, I think, to an extent, the type of person you are, and like, I'll give you an example. I remember years ago, I met this really, really funny actor and comedian, right? And we were doing acting classes together for like, I don't know, 3 months or something. And he'd been doing it for years at that point, like a good 2 years. And he was excellent. And, it was like the 10 minutes before class, and I was like, hey, how's it going? Like, what have you applied for? He asked me that, and I told him X, Y, Z. And I was like, oh, what have you applied for? And he just went like, oh, nothing. And I was like, why? What do you mean? And he's like, oh, I'm kind of like shy and nervous about it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you're fucking brilliant. Like, what? What? And look, the issue there was confidence. I guess he just felt he wasn't good enough. But like, the point I'm trying to make is that the way you perceive yourself and the way other people perceive you, two different things, right? And
Sure.
you can be the thing holding yourself back. But in this plan of being your own manager, being responsible for yourself, like dude, in business, in everything I've ever done work wise, I threw caution to the wind and said, fuck it. And that's what got me ahead in a lot of places and still continues to. And like people find that inspiring, like people want that, like that quality, right? But not everyone has that, you know.
So,
And like I think a lot of
so
people go
let's
into jobs and they want contentment. They don't want, you know, oh, I want to be my own manager, I want to be freelance, I want to be this, that, and the other. Like I know people that don't want to go freelance because, you know, they're fearful of getting the work and the risk factor associated with that and stuff. They don't think about the reward. They don't think about the fact that they could probably make it work. They're just scared.
absolutely, absolutely. So first of all, let's take out the segment of the population that I'm not talking about. That there are people who are, for whatever reason, physical, mental, whatever, incapable of doing what I'm talking about. That there are people in society that legitimately need help, and I think that society should support them. That I think it's terrible that we have so much and yet people struggle. So that's not them, but I think it's a small-ish slice. I'm talking about the vast majority who can, and can is a wide spectrum. So let's talk about like lack of confidence, fear, and let's actually go all the way to like trauma. That there might be somebody who is traumatized to the point where it paralyzes them for acting in the way that I'm talking about. And there is a path where they have to work through that trauma to get back to being what they would consider to be a complete person. So I'm not talking about that either. I'm going more towards those who haven't yet thought the thoughts required to have the belief that these things can be done, along with when you talk about fear, a lot of fear is truly self-inflicted. That you think, if I do this, somebody might react. And the story you tell yourself about that is terrifying, but it is a story that you tell yourself. One of the other things that I read long ago stuck with me is you aren't who you think you are. You aren't even who others think you are. You are who you think others think you are. And if you sit and think about that long enough and get to the point where you like really, really understand and believe it, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm telling myself a story that just isn't true, but I'm living it as if it were. Including like some people might walk into a restaurant and think, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me. They think that my shoes are stupid or my fly's unzipped or whatever. And like nobody's thinking about them, right? But in their minds, it is this really horrific thing. And again, I'm not talking about like legitimate trauma. I don't want to say, oh yeah, everybody can do this. I know that not everybody can. What I'm saying is there's a large enough population that's worth talking about. And that once you start to realize, oh, you know what? I can do that. I can go out and fail. And look, again, I'm going to keep bringing it back to you. You're a case study in you have tried and failed at numerous things by your own description or admission, and you're fine, right? It built up that understanding of who you are and what it is that's important to you. And so I think that everybody who has a job is literally working for themselves, whether they realize it or not, and is a manager of one, whether they accept it or not. And the ones out there who have a real shot of hitting escape velocity and really taking back their agency will realize, oh, yeah, I can think of it that way. And I can treat myself as if I'm both an employee and a manager. And I can say, it's not necessarily quit your job. And the whole freelancing thing, I started doing contract work when I had a stable job. So, like, I had that stable income. I didn't have to struggle. And that's super important. Like, yeah, take care of yourself first. And then the stuff that I did on top of that, where for years it was a mixture of either not paid or paid, but then over time it was like, okay, I ended up making minimum wage doing high value software work. I've tried a bunch of different, apps and ventures where I put money in and it didn't pay off. But yeah, I kept going because I had that base. I think that there are literally millions of people out there, and hopefully they all end up listening to this someday, that will hear that and say, okay, I can do this, and I'm going to start adding something on top. And it grows to the point where they either can leave their day job or their day job is taken away from them and they're not starting flat footed, that they have that rolling start of, okay, now I need to live off of this or I need to grow it or whatever that is. Really, that's where I stand, that you are self-employed, you are a manager of one. You don't have to admit it and you don't have to take it any further, but it does create an opportunity for you to change your behaviors and change the circumstances you claim to no longer want to be a part of.
I think when you said that you are a manager whether you realize it or not, that's spot on. That is like the whole crux of this argument. Because, like, when I realized, like, the potential in, say, like, different ways of making money, or that even that, you know, a work contract didn't have to be 40 hours a week. It could be like a few hours a week, or it
Right.
could be project by project, or you know what I mean? Like when you realize there are no rules other than the ones you set, like anything is possible. But the
Yeah,
problem
and even
is,
more importantly is nobody's going to tell you the real rules. They're going to tell you the rules as they see them and almost certainly as benefits them.
100%, yeah. And this is why I butt heads with a lot of people and why people think I'm crazy and whatnot. Like, why would you go for this? This is like, I think people are crazy for expecting me to go after a job that's capped at a certain potential and where I would basically sign off my weekends, also sign off, you know, Monday to Friday for the next 40 odd years. Like, I think you're insane for thinking that I should do that. And I think you're insane for thinking that's what's the best way to live life. I think that's insane, and I'll challenge anyone that says otherwise. Like they'll argue, oh well, it's secure. Oh well, you know, you get these benefits. Oh well, I'm earning X Y Z a month. Like I've had like voice acting gigs before where I earned like say 400 in one shot for like a few hours work.
Mhm.
You know, to get that money, you had to work 40 hours plus overtime. When you start looking at it like that, it's like, oh fuck, oh yeah, maybe there's a point to it. Like that's the thing, and I'm not like mocking people. Like I think that if you're happy, look, if you're genuinely happy with that arrangement, great. But as you mentioned earlier, ain't no such thing as job security.
Right.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Like there's no loyalty. You could work for like unless you fucking are like family, it's a family business, I suppose. But then even then you've had people
Even
sue each
then.
other, but like that's the only way that you're really like somewhat secure, you know. Other than that, you can be fired anytime. I've seen people fucking fired after like 7 or 8 years of work and they like built the company up. The woman who you know the famous story of the woman who worked for Disney and she like saved Toy Story 2 because she had
Oh
like a
yeah.
backup copy, yeah, or some
Uh-huh.
shit. And she so like they are there was it was argued she had like a job for life there, and she was there. She got like made redundant a few years back,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
And
And it's like you could argue that you know she should have had a job for life, but it's a
yeah.
company and they don't see things that way.
Yeah. So let's go back to that concept of the uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth, if you have a job, is if you show up today and do your job, you'll get paid most likely, and you'll probably have that job tomorrow, but it's not guaranteed. And no one, no one really approaches it that way. Like I'd like them to start
Yeah,
because that's a much more honest assessment of their situation instead of, oh, oh, I only have to do this and then I'll be fine. Because here's the other part of it, which is what you do in the time that you're not doing that. Because right now, I see a lot of people who treat their free time as they can do kind of whatever they want, and they're doing it to, kind of self-soothe, self-medicate for the job position they don't like, but it's not heading in a direction that actually gets them to that escape velocity and that safety. And this is not to say that people should work every minute of every day. No, you should live your life, but you should have somewhat of a plan of how you're going to use some of your available time and energy to get out of the position that you don't like. And even if you like your job, even if somebody says, man, you know what? I really like my job. Okay. Do you like the fact that it can be taken away tomorrow? That's the part you don't like. And so Sure, go ahead and do your own thing and keep doing your job if you enjoy it for as long as you're allowed to. Just keep in mind that at some point, these circumstances, be it a pandemic, be it a cancellation of government funding you didn't realize you were dependent upon, be it the death of an executive where all of a sudden the entire organization changes. Like there are so many things that you can't control. It's not your job. It is simply your customer, and your customer may decide to go work with somebody else or stop doing business altogether for reasons that you don't understand and can't predict. So don't wake up one day and find yourself in that position and again be caught flat-footed.
I think it's a tough one. Like I remember I did an episode years ago on multi-potentiality and polymathy. So for
Rolls
those who
off the
don't,
tongue.
yeah, for those who don't know, basically like think the Renaissance man, the idea that like classically you had to be trained in several areas, and you'd be surprised at how many creatives are, and people famous actors, famous musicians that are trained and can do a lot of different things. A lot of that comes down to want rather than being told to or whatever. It just comes down to self interest and whatnot. But here's the thing: in general, in the job markets as they exist today, the expectation is that you are able to do a lot of different things and not just you can't be one dimensional. One dimensional. Now, since like the industrial age, we've been pushing the idea of specialisms. That's why you have plumbers, electricians, people trained in one specific area. And the idea was always master your craft, have a craft, master your craft. Now that does exist in today's society, but as we've seen, you know, programming became popular, right? Everyone got into it. Suddenly now you have too many programmers. It's oversaturation. Just like many other fields, like when I took a business degree and now everyone's got a fucking business degree, so it doesn't mean anything. That's what happens. But I think the way I see it is there are like certain specialisms in life that are valued more than others. Like if you're a doctor, guess what? You're always going to have work. If you're a lawyer, you're always going to have work. Like it's one of those things like programming. You're beholden to technology and how things change, and you have to change with them. And it won't always. It's a roll of the dice. You might always get the hand that you want. With music, I mean, and creativity, like the game has changed. It's no, like, I think people when they act, when they jump into the music industry or the acting industry, a lot of the time they think about it like it was 20, 30 years ago. And it's like, no, 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 you got to think about now, what it is now. Like, quick example, musicians mostly earn from touring,
Mm-hmm.
don't earn from record sales. You might get like a small percentage of stuff for like streaming, but no longer do you actually earn from the music anymore. You earn from ticket sales and merchandise. That's what you earn from. If you're an actor, it's box office sales. It's how many followers you got on Instagram. It's what is how much brand. Sorry, yeah. Think of your name like a brand. Like how much brand recognition do you have in that name? Like how much is tied up in that? How likely is your name going to help us to sell this film? Like that's the way you got to look at it. So whatever your specialism is in life, whatever you choose to do in life, just remember this. If you stick to it and that's your only profession and that's the only thing that you do, there's always going to be a big risk factor that in the future you might be made redundant randomly, you might get fired one day, it might be entirely not your fault. You have to have some contingency plans. You have to have options, other things you can do, you know? You don't have to necessarily be like a master in them, but you just have to know, like, okay, if all else fails, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, whatever.
Yeah, I want to touch on trades just real quick. So you mentioned like plumber is a perfect example. And someone who is a good plumber is good at creating value, right? They can do things well, they can fix problems, etc. And I don't think that's enough, and I don't think that's very safe anymore. Instead, I think they also have to figure out how to capture value. And it's not that you necessarily need to get on Plumber Talk or have a YouTube channel or anything like that.
There's got
but
to be
you
a
do,
podcast out there, isn't there, about plumbing? You just know it.
oh, I'm sure there is. And I would say that's not required, but if you are a plumber, you need to understand how people will find you, how people will like work with you, and how people will pay you. So my wife ends up scheduling a lot of the repairs and stuff in our house, and she has a really strong bias towards people she can like schedule online, pay electronically, and that sort of thing. It's just more convenient. And so there are plumbers out there that have that available, even in our small town here in the deep south, and they win. Yeah, you have to be a good plumber. You can't show up and like not fix the leak. But at the same time, being able to fix the leak just isn't enough. You also need to be found. You need to make it convenient to pay you and all those other things that value capture part of it. And the ones who are good, they understand that kind of intrinsically or maybe subconsciously because they are pleasant to talk to. They do show up on time. They seem to care that something is done well, etc. And I think that that is a model for almost every job because those are people who are managing themselves. They're an employee, that thing that I was talking about, and it's working for them. Whereas if they had joined a big plumbing company, then maybe they have a job tomorrow, or maybe all of a sudden they don't because some Walmart of plumbing has moved into the area and taken all of the mom and pop, but not the individual business. So there you go. I think it's a good bookend for what we were talking about because trades in particular are one of those you can't really do it asynchronously or remotely. Like you do have to show up and do something physical, but there's so much more to it now that simply understanding your craft and being good at it literally isn't enough. You have to take that next step of understanding where business comes from and how to service your clients.
What are the adjustments and changes that people need to make to go freelance and make it a success?
The first one is to realize that freelancer is not a job title, it's a business model. That, yeah, it's the easiest job in the world to get because you just say, I'm a freelancer, and bling, you're a freelancer. It's the hardest job in the world to keep because if you do not sell and deliver work, if you do not create and capture value, then you do not have a job. So when I hire freelance developers, they are a development shop of one. They have to have their own computer. They have to have their own software. They have to have like be a self-contained unit. In particular, again, this is kind of a US thing, but it's probably similar throughout the world. If I give them too much or I tell them too much, then all of a sudden they are an employee and I have violated tax law that I've tried to skirt paying employment taxes by calling them a contractor but treating them like an employee. Instead, I need to give them goals and work to be done, but there's a limited amount that I can tell them how to do it because if I cross that line, then again, they aren't really a contractor, they're an employee. But I love that because I don't want to tell people exactly what to do. I want them to have agency. I want them there's a bit of an art to programming as well as the science. There is some creativity in it. You can tell the difference between good code and bad code, that sort of thing. And I want them to feel like they have that control because I want them to take that control. I want them to say, yeah, you asked me to do this and I did it, but I also saw this other thing in here. And this actually happens to me a couple times a week with the team that I have where they saw something that I didn't even ask for. And they're like, oh yeah, I did this because it'll cause a problem down the road. I absolutely love that. And these people will have a job for a very long time. However, their job could disappear if something either fantastic or tragic happens to me. And by the way, on the fantastic side, yeah, they lose their job, but I'm going to share the wealth. My daydream is having one of the things that we've built all of a sudden, get sold, tons of money, and be able to spread some of it around in life-changing ways to others because they help me get there. It'll still be asymmetrical because that's the way these things work, but it doesn't have to be 100% and 0%, like kind of the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle of doling out the spoils feels about right to me. And anybody who wants to become a freelancer can start today and just do it. You just have to find work. And by the way, the other thing I would tell anybody doing that is if you have a day job, don't quit it. Because having that stability gives you the options that it keeps you from getting into a situation where you feel like you have to work with a bad client because you have to make rent or whatever. Like, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but you can go out and do your own thing, especially with all the various marketplaces and marketing opportunities around the world. You've done marketing in the past, you know these things exist. And once you start treating yourself as your own client and really condense and focus your efforts and your energy, then I think you are going to hit that escape velocity. And I think that lots of other people, and almost certainly anybody who can listen to this, probably has access to enough technology to do their own thing in some way, shape, or form, and then use that to build on top of itself.
What has freelancing taught you about life?
That you're on your own.
Yeah,
But
fair enough. Yeah.
that's the big one. So the common phrase is eat what you kill. So if you don't sell work, then you don't have work to do. And I was again fortunate. I was fortunate in a whole bunch of ways. In particular, when I was born. So when the internet went commercial, kind of in the mid '90s, when I was in my 20s, I'd already loved computers. I'd had a computer since early on. And at that time, anybody who could spell HTML could make a fortune. And so I rode that from one place to another. I was like, yep, I know web stuff. And they're like, whoa, you know web stuff? Whereas today, if you look back at like the stuff I built, I mean, it's like comically bad, right? It's like early on, your first few songs probably weren't great. And my first few apps weren't great, but they were something. And I was able to do enough to go work with good names. So in particular, I ended up working for Microsoft Research for about a year and a half. I was there as a contractor, but having that name on my resume in the late '90s, early 2000s was really strong. And so I could leverage that into the next thing, the next thing. I ended up, one of the best jobs I ever had was I was the chief technology officer of a craft brewery. So I kid you not, this is a guy who had started brewing beer in his dorm room, turned it into a brew pub. So they were a craft brewery that eventually had 4 restaurants. And what I did, and this is where I met my partner, Elizabeth. What I did was I built a lot of operation software where we could track what was going on, like food cost and inventory and stuff like that. I learned a lot about the restaurant industry, hospitality, and I built a bunch of things. But at a certain point, I realized I was building more software than was getting used. And so it didn't make sense. Like at a certain point, I knew that it didn't make sense to keep me around. And so in the meantime, I'd started working on a side project with a buddy of mine where we actually made something that was impressive enough at that point in time that we sold it. And so I told the guy at the brew pub, look, I've been doing this thing. I'm going to be leaving, but we can transition easily. I don't think you need more software. I think you need people to run what's already been created. Maintain a great relationship with him. Actually worked with him again in the future. So don't burn bridges is kind of one of the other lessons in there. But because I had helped create a company with a buddy of mine, having gone through that process, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do like for the rest of my life. Now, it's been 20 years since that happened. And I've been trying to chase that dragon all along. And along the way, I finally figured out the right balance between doing things for others, which we call the services part of the business. We build software for other people. And that's as close as I can come to having a day job. So I'm kind of inherently unemployable at this point. Like I can't imagine what would happen if I showed up at an office. Like the thought just it makes my skin crawl, kind of like it probably makes yours crawl. And at the same time, here I am living in a small town in the deep south, not exactly like the hotbed of technological innovation. Like Silicon Bayou is not a thing, despite how much I try. So freelance has taught me that if you take control, responsibility, and accountability for making the things happen that you want to happen, then you end up with the right kind of hard. And it is hard. Like it's easy for me to look back and talk about what has happened because I can skip over the times that I ran out of money. I mean, you talk about like struggling. I remember waking up in the middle of the night with because I was living outside of Houston and the air conditioner had turned off just because like, the house was cool enough. But that sound, I woke up and thought, oh shit, like turn the power off because I'm out of money. And I had a family and we took a look at our expenses, we cut things, sold a car, all that kind of stuff. Like so I've done the scramble before and it's not fun. Again, it's a slightly different situation. I do have a safety net. I could probably call my parents and be like, hey, can you float me for however long? And they'd say yes and whatever. So it wasn't truly terrifying, but it was somewhat humiliating. Here's a guy who sold a company, made a bunch of money, who then ran out of money. And yeah, I ran out of money putting it into the things that didn't work because I really wanted to do it again. And I didn't understand the part that luck had played the first time. But yeah, I did the work and I stood in luck's way. But luck came and it came early enough with my first time out that I ended up tricking myself into thinking that, oh man, I'm good. But once you're lucky, twice you're good. I'm looking for my second time now to show that, yeah, I am good. And while I talk to you right now in a pretty good and happy place, I'm still looking forward to like recapturing that magic of, oh yeah, we built something for a long time. And like all of a sudden, like there's a liquidity event, as we like to say, there's an exit and there's a whole bunch of money and I get to spread it around.
Thanks for sharing. What has programming taught you about life?
Ooh, man, that's a good one. So I'll tell you what I absolutely love about programming. And at this point in my career, I only do a little bit of programming. I program mostly for fun or for showing that things are possible, showing that you can do things. That for the most part, my team writes the vast majority of everything we ship. Yeah, I can still dip in there and like fix things like typos and simple stuff where it doesn't make sense to assign it. But I loved programming from an early age because the computer did what I told it to do. Now, this is before Windows. Once Windows came along, then all bets are off. But these days, when I do something, when I write code and execute it and see that my idea is now on the screen. And by the way, this feeling doesn't go away with AI. When I ask the AI to write something for me and then I take it and run it and it works, then it's still every bit as satisfying. It's really cool to create something, right? You know this. You play a song or maybe you just play a riff and you're like, oh man, that feels right. Like that's good stuff. So I learned that I really like that feeling of control where there's a very direct connection between my action and the result. So one of the other phrases that Elizabeth and I throw out all the time is you're responsible for your actions, but not for the results. The closer the results come to my actions, the happier I am. I like that one-to-one. And when I stray too far from it, right, when I'm doing things and I'm not really sure what's going to happen, I'm at peace with it because I don't have the expectations that I used to have when I was younger, but it's not the same kind of hit. Like I love talking to you right now. It's very satisfying, very engaging conversation. I mean, I'm going to be exhausted. I'm a social introvert, so this is like going to totally drain my
Oh, I'm so
battery.
sorry.
No, no, no. This is great. This is truly, this is great. It's just, this is how I choose to spend my energy. I don't know what, if anything, will come of this discussion, of this podcast, of recording this video. And I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with it because I'm coming into it looking for a deep, meaningful, satisfying discussion that I feel like we've had. Like this is a win. And at some point, I'll throw in something about mental health because that's apparently how you get invited back. Um, but with the programming, that connection between I did the thing, I got the result. Oh, and the fact that I can do it where I'm the limitation. And that's the other part that is so satisfying about technology is that nobody's born knowing this stuff. Like you're not a born programmer. There are some things that help you. So I am good at math, like it just makes sense to me. And I have a fantastic memory. And that's super duper helpful for programming. I can keep a lot of things in my head. And so the pictures that I have in my head get more and more complex, and I can build it on the screen. But I keep telling myself, if I can't do it, it's because I haven't learned how to do it. It's not that it can't be done. All these things can be done. And when I look at things like AI and LLMs, I'm like, man, that's brilliant. Like I couldn't have created that. I mean, I guess I could have if I'd gone down that path, but I wasn't on a path to create that. But I'm certainly on a path where I can appreciate it and say, man, that's some impressive math. And that's what LLMs are. They're just so much math that it looks like magic. Oh, I'll accept that and I'll use it and I'll love it. So programming taught me that I really like that connection between my actions and my results.
Thanks for sharing. A couple of final questions for you. And also, I just caught that, by the way. That was a quick little jab there.
I
I'll
wonder
say,
if that was going to land or not.
I'll say this, right? Anyone who's been on the show before, you're welcome back on the show again. Unless, I don't know, you pissed me off or something. But
I
no,
mean, there's
but
still time.
no, it's just like I opened up the show about maybe 8 months ago where I was like, hey, it's not just like typical interviews, like anything's game. Just reach out to me if you've got a topic, something you want to talk in depth. Let's do it. I just need a bit of like prep and then I'm good to go, you know? Um the mental health thing was just like a it started with one buddy of mine and then a few people reached out to me and I was like, fine, fuck it, let's do a week of it.
Oh yeah, no, and it's important, and I'm glad you did the week. Man, I loved so right before we started this, I was finishing up the Gemma Louise
Mm.
episode, and I mean, how adorable is she? Like, I could listen to her kind of all day long. I'd love to hear how she sings because there's no way that accent survives. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I listened to some of the others. I think it's important to get comfortable talking about things like that. And that's really what you talked around. Most of it was like, yeah, there's a stigma. There's people who are afraid of the vulnerability of talking about mental health. Again, Elizabeth and I talk about that constantly. Like we we hear in each other that something is wrong, and we're
Mm.
like, hey, what's going on? And a lot of times it comes down to, again, what is the story you're telling yourself? Like how have you blown something out of proportion? And what can I do to help you see that that's what's happening? And again, that's not to negate any of the real problems. I'm talking about as somebody who doesn't have real problems, like as somebody who is a middle-aged, heterosexual, cisgender, white male in America, like, okay, what do I have to complain about? Right? The deck is stacked in my favor. But that doesn't mean that I don't feel these things and I don't feel the stress, the anxiety, the imposter syndrome. I mean, that's where a lot of people holding back from freelancing comes from, is like they think, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm like, yeah, you are. Trust me. I've hired people worse than you. I've paid people worse than you thousands of dollars to do shitty work. And while they're no longer here,
You killed
you
them? No, I'm just kidding.
answer. Well, that's the other line of business. We shouldn't go into that while we're recording. um, the managing your mental health, and managing it starts with being aware of it. And I do believe like mental health is health. That if you are just making it through but miserable, then that's a problem. And I think that being debilitatingly depressed, being distracted even. So a lot of what we do is called term knowledge work, which means that we work with our brains. And if there is something in your life, and it could be a family thing, it could be, it could be anything that is really distracting you, then to me, that's every bit as sick as if you have a cold. So take that time. I don't want you to do the work. And this is back to where, I'm running the business that I want to exist. This is the golden rule stuff, that I think that the rules can be set to where everybody has a fair deal. And this brings me to what might be my final thing that Elizabeth and I say to each other all the time, which is, hey, you spend all this time doing golden rule stuff to others. Are you golden ruling yourself? So she'll just cut it down to, dude, golden rule yourself. Like, why aren't you treating yourself as well as you're treating others? Like, you are being worse to yourself than you would ever allow you to be to one of your direct reports. So just like stop it, going back to being a manager, being an employee, et cetera. And I think that's where a lot of mental health issues start, is really just being unkind to yourself. And especially when you have a legitimate cause for bad feelings, then piling on top of that by telling yourself, and you shouldn't feel this way, or you are weak for feeling this way, or you can't let anybody know you feel this way. Like all those things just really start to cause a feedback loop that is awful and hard to escape, because every cycle around makes you a little bit less capable of breaking it. And so it really reinforces. And I feel very fortunate to have a couple of very close and deep relationships to where I can have someone from the outside break it for me like that. I'm incredibly fortunate to know that if something goes wrong, then I have people who can just take the wheel and help me out of it. And that hasn't always been the case.
Thanks for sharing. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Man, that's super tough because I've gotten a lot of great advice over the years. And as I mentioned, I have a pretty good memory. And so one that I keep coming back to is you will learn more from bad management than you ever will from good management. And ironically, it was given to me by the worst manager I ever had. And I don't think he understood that he was talking about himself. So that little piece, really what it told me was pay attention. Um, I mean, really, there's just a long list of things that I have heard and snippets. Again, Elizabeth and I we rapid fire the things that we read, like how am I creating the circumstances that I claim to no longer want to be a part of? Golden rule yourself. Lots of things that center around agency, accountability, self-reliance, that sort of thing. So I can't pick one. And I'll tell you that I think that it's important to get a bunch of different advice from different angles, different viewpoints to really triangulate who you are, because people have said things to me that I'm sure that they believe, like they pass lie detector tests saying that they believe this. That just doesn't make sense to me. And it just kind of like doesn't resonate with me. And I don't hold on to it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's your belief. That's not mine. And then there are other times where someone says something like, oh man, that's like, I'm filing that away. Like I'm going to pull that out, as much as I can. So that's about the best I can answer your question.
What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Biggest, man, hard to measure these things, especially since like y'all use metric and we don't. Um,
Can't
but
help if you do it wrong, all right?
so early on, my folks read.
Slip that in
Yeah.
there.
Oh, fair play, fair play. So
Jousting.
my folks read. They as a family, it was the 80s, we watched TV and stuff like that, but not to the degree that is prevalent now. My parents always had a book, and my dad always had multiple books going, and he would choose depending on his mood. He'd have like a historical fiction, like a naval sea saga, and then like maybe some sort of like business thing. And so I grew up where reading was just what you did. And so I read a bunch, and I think that reading is a skill. And the more you do it, the easier it is. And then you hit this inflection point where you start to realize, wow, if I want to learn something, it's probably written down somewhere. And um, I really like exposing myself to, again, this world of knowledge, these different viewpoints. And I can, by the way, I consider audiobooks to be the same as reading. Like if you are essentially visualizing what an author is saying, regardless of how it's being delivered to you, then that is the same basic muscle as reading. And also going back to the advice thing, I did read a line that stuck with me that said, people who don't read have no advantage over people who can't read. And I was like, oh man, that's like, woo, all right. Talk about kicking the junk. So reading is one of the big differentiators in my life. That by the time I showed up, I had a different set of viewpoints and solutions to the problems that my clients and employers were facing. And having read broadly and, kind of connected dots and stuff like that, that's how I became special. That's how I became somebody who knew things that others didn't, or saw it in a way that others couldn't at that point in time. So big life lesson is, man, just read and expose yourself to the world, because then you have a chance of really growing yourself from the inside out.
Could not agree more. Final question for you. Do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I always have all kinds of things going on. So I think this started with Fractal PM. So Fractal PM is hopefully going to be the last thing that I ever build. It's my Google idea. It is the big one. So Google said we're going to organize the world's information, and then they make billions of dollars, 37 cents per click. So it is a very simple business model where it is really hard to pull off, and they did it. They are a clear winner in the space, and I see that as being inspirational. And I want to go in a different direction, and I want to manage the world's tasks. So one of the things that I'm really big on is planning and execution and separating the two. So I do lots of planning. I manage my recurring tasks. I manage my days. I manage my weeks. It is a very structured way of living and working for the things that I need to get done. But I do that to create the space for the spontaneous things. So for the most part, I'm done working for the day at 3 p.m. my time. So I tend to start fairly early because I have people overseas. I want to work with them. And then 3 p.m. rolls around, I'm done. And I have trained everyone that I work with to not expect much from me after 3 p.m. And that gives me lots of time to read and think, whatever. But the only reason I can do that is because I know what needs to get done. And I know that if something is important, then my system will alert me like, hey, today you need to do this thing. And it's like things don't fall through the cracks for me. I want to give that to others, but nothing out there really does the trick for me. That like I've tried lots of, I've tried, Jira and Asana and ClickUp and all these project management tools, and they're just too much. Like I'm just overwhelmed. But then I compare that to the first time I ever used Slack. Like I used Slack and I'm like, oh man, this is brilliant. I'm never using any other chat again. Or even Zoom. Zoom was great. Like I remember WebEx pissed me off about a decade ago. And so I was like, I'll try the Zoom thing. And actually at this point, it's probably 14 years ago, very early in the days of Zoom. And I tried Zoom and I'm like, oh, this just works. This is great. So I want that for people's tasks where, again, you're a manager, you manage yourself. This is a way to manage your life. And my vision is very similar to Duolingo, where you can manage yourself for free. And like, I do want to truly make this available to everyone in the world that has a smartphone, because I figure that's the minimum level of technology you need to use it. So we're talking about like billions of people. And I want them to be able to manage the business of life so that they have that time and mental capacity to do the things they really want to do. And I think that almost everyone that I talk to is very overwhelmed. They're very busy. And a lot of what they're busy with is keeping track of all the stuff they have to do. Almost everyone I've talked to has tried a bunch of different systems, and it's like, yeah, nothing's really worked for me. So great, there's a market for this. And so I want to give folks very easy, dead simple task management to manage your life. And then the reason why it's called Fractal PM is because one person's task is another person's project. So my client might give me a task of build this application, and they have another task of do the marketing, do the DevOps, do the whatever. Well, to me, that task bling turns into a project with tasks, and I assign it to people, and some of their tasks bling turn into projects. So it's a fractal approach of every project is comprised of tasks. Some of those tasks are projects that are comprised of tasks, and it keeps going through and through. And I want to charge for managing other people. So It'll be dirt cheap. It'll be like so cheap you don't even think about it. Um, it can be for businesses, it can be for sports teams or churches or schools or whatever, but you can manage yourself for free. You can manage others for dirt cheap. And if it spreads, then dirt cheap adds up, right? So I would much rather have a million people using something for a couple dollars a month than have 10 people using something for hundreds of thousands per month, even if the dollars came out the same. Like this is my way of changing the world. And it kind of takes everything that I have learned about personal management, about work management, about managing other people, about managing myself. This is my magnum opus of everything that I know put into software form that I think can benefit millions of people that I never meet face to face.
So if there is anything to take from your story, it's this. It's that everything you learn and experience in life, even if it's not all necessarily at the time something you expect to be useful, will ultimately culminate in the realization of an ultimate goal or dream. And you actually needed every aspect of the journey, including the aspects you didn't initially think were valuable. Everything is equally valuable, and it'll all be realized in that one moment.
Possibly. And this brings us to what is now probably the last thing that Elizabeth and I say to ourselves. And that's we use the phrase arguing with reality. So things are the way they are. And I'm not one of those like everything happens for a reason. I think it's a terrible phrase. But also, I don't argue with reality. When things are the way they are, then I accept that. And I know that I cannot change the past. I also feel that I have some control over my future. And so being able to look at things, and yeah, in hindsight, it's obvious like, oh, because you were born at this time, because you caught the internet boom, because, and by the way, I dropped out of college and ended up catching the internet boom. So I did something at a time that time doesn't exist anymore. Like there's been a couple of others that you may have been able to do that. You could drop out of school and catch the like, machine learning boom, right? Anybody who could spell R could make a fortune. Or maybe somebody just dropped out to catch the AI boom, right? You can spell AI, you can make a fortune. So it only happens every once in a while. I happened to time it. And I didn't leave to catch the internet boom, just to be clear. I hated school the way that you hate like a job job. I just didn't like, I love learning, but I didn't like being told what to learn. And so it just grated upon me. But I happened to catch it at a time when I could work a minimum wage job or just over minimum wage and yet still afford rent in a house with four other people, right? I don't know if that's possible anymore unless you go, certain places. On top of that, I fixed medical equipment during the day. So I worked at a Kinko's making copies in the middle of the night. So I worked graveyard shift and then I fixed medical equipment. And because I had that, there's two jobs. I then had enough that I could invest in myself later when it was time to buy computer time, like rent a computer and then buy and lease a computer, et cetera, et cetera. So looking back, it's not that it was inevitable that I end up here. It's that you can kind of trace my story through all these various threads like, oh, this thing happened and that put you in the position for this thing and this thing and this thing. I don't know. I don't know how my life would have been different if I had made other decisions, of course, right? Nobody does. You can tell yourself that oh, if I'd done this, then it would have turned out that way. Yeah, you don't know. But I'm not fixated on it. So I do look back, not necessarily a nostalgia, although you play some like 90s shoegaze and man, I'll get nostalgia like that. But I look back to learn lessons for what I want to repeat. And especially now, like I have two kids in college. And so it's time to give them some of the lessons, like, some things they're only going to learn on their own, but there are other things that I can tell them. And me telling them these lessons does not prevent them from learning it on their own because they're not going to listen to me. But when what dad talked about does show up, they're not caught unprepared. They're like, oh, this is that thing. And so maybe
Mm.
I can take 20 or 30% of the sting out of it. Right. You're not going to learn unless you get stung. But maybe I can take a little bit out so that it's not as big of a deal for them as it was for me. And that's my way of kind of elevating them.
It's been absolutely amazing talking with you. I've learned a lot. I think our listeners almost definitely will learn a lot from this. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
Oh,
everything.
my pleasure. And we're guaranteed we're going to do this again. I don't know
Oh,
when, I
100%.
don't know what
100%.
centers around, but like, man, this is way too much fun to only do it once. And now it's time for me to go take a nap.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're always welcome. Hit me up if you want to talk about something and let's make it happen.
Fantastic. Good talking to you,
Fantastic.
Christian.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.